Let's get back to that story out of Hong Kong, where protesters are trying to draw international attention to their movement against the government's controversial extradition bill.
A rally organised by the pro-democracy group, the Civil Human Rights Front, just kicked off this hour, and protesters are hoping to ramp up pressure on Chief Executive Carrie Lam's government ahead of the G20 Summit in Osaka that kicks off this Friday.
Our correspondent Bruce Harrison is near the protest area. Let's cross over to him for the latest. Bruce, what are the protesters hoping to achieve from tonight's rally?
Well, Stephen, Dawn, good evening. And you can see around me that protesters are still filling this area. Behind me, this giant red circle is a Ferris wheel, and that's where the speakers are addressing a massive crowd right now. Thousands of people have come here chanting Free Hong Kong G20. They want the international community to recognize what's going on here, their concerns about this proposed China extradition bill, a law that Carrie Lam, the chief executive of the government here, wants to pass, which would allow extraditions for criminals from Hong Kong to mainland China. They are totally against that bill, and they're hoping through this rally and other actions they took today, delivering letters to consulates of powerful nations, that those countries will hopefully listen and take these concerns to the G20 meeting in Osaka. And that will put pressure on the government in Hong Kong and also pressure on Beijing, considering Hong Kong is ruled over the one country, two systems policy. And they're hoping that Xi Jinping, or not Xi Jinping, but government officials in Beijing who've already said this issue won't be discussed at G20, put pressure on him to make sure that it is a topic item at that meeting this week.
Bruce, as you mentioned there, the protesters have made their rounds to the various consulates, we know. Can we expect the foreign leaders to actually respond, though, to their calls on this?
That's a good question, Dawn, and the protesters themselves told me they're uncertain what the reaction will be. We did see just recently this week that in response to some of the human rights concerns based on the violence between police and protesters on June 12th, that Great Britain has said that it is going to suspend export licenses for riot control gear to Hong Kong. China responded in turn by saying that Britain shouldn't meddle in Hong Kong affairs. So that's one of the responses we've heard. We've also heard earlier that the U.S. president would bring up this issue at G20. But based on the actions this morning, the other 17 countries they've tried to reach out to, will they respond? They received these letters warmly, but there's been no confirmation that they will actually approach Xi Jinping or bring this up as an open discussion item at the G20 in Osaka. But the protesters said they felt they had no choice. They're not getting heard by the Hong Kong government over their demands, scrap the extradition bill, a full inquiry into police violence. So they believed reaching beyond their borders was the only option they had.
All right, Bruce, thank you very much for that update from Hong Kong. We've been speaking there to Bruce Harrison.
Now, earlier today, more than 1,000 protesters marched to 19 consulates, chanting slogans and carrying placards. Activists called on the countries to help liberate Hong Kong.
They submitted petitions asking international governments to confront China over the issue at the G20 Summit, but Beijing has repeatedly said that it will not allow the Hong Kong extradition bill to be discussed at the summit.
我这里愿重申 ，G20 是国际经济合作论坛，主要讨论经济、贸易、金融领域的问题，重点是加强各国的宏观经济政策协调，来合作应对挑战。 G20 不会讨论香港问题，中方也绝不会同意 G20 讨论香港问题，这是完全是中国的内政。